Hi folks, my name's Nathan. Nate, call me what you like. This is going to be a little bit of a different piece of content. I know that most profiles on how I got my job are written. Unfortunately, writing takes a lot of time, at least to do well. And so thanks to the team at How I Got My Job for being flexible and giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about my journey and some lessons learned in the hope that it helps you as you kickstart your career. I'm going to do this by navigating through my LinkedIn profile and simply talking about some of the things that I've done, some of the things that I've learned throughout my career, and sort of like the in hindsight, anyways, logical progression that I'm now able to look back on rather fondly. What I'll do is I'll start right at the beginning, and as I'm getting all the way down, there's a reasonable amount of stuff here. I'll just start by talking about the fact that for most of my childhood, I played sports and I got pretty good at golf. I represented my state, captained my state, lived overseas, competed all around the world, and in many different ways, it looked like I was on track to be a pretty decent professional golfer. Unfortunately, when I was 15, I started experiencing very bad nerve damage in my L4, L5, so lower back, caused by rotation around the axis of my spine. And that made it just near impossible to get better because every single time I swung the club, I was experiencing significant pain. And that meant that I couldn't commit. If you can't commit, if you're not confident, if you're not able to effectively execute in a high performance sporting context, you can't compete with everyone else out there because people are really, really good all around the world. Anyways, fast forward 3 years, I kept trying to work through it. Unfortunately, I no longer enjoyed the game. I was struggling, I wasn't getting better, and I had to try and figure out, what was the rest of my life going to look like? Up until that point, I thought maybe naively I was going to be flying around in G5s and playing on the PGA Tour and things like that, right? And maybe in a different universe that became my reality. When I got home, I had no idea what I was going to do. I'd been studying on a full athletic scholarship in a Div 1 college in the United States. Went over there for sports, not to study. I never went back to university. I never really appreciated the way that some others did formal education environments, and I have quite a distinct perspective on why that might be. Instead, I focused on experimental pathways of entrepreneurship. I got home, I immediately started working in call centers just to start making some money, right? I needed to bring in some dosh to pay bills and things like that. I was 18, 19 at the time. I then fortunately managed to team up with three of my mates and build and successfully launch a really cool clothing label called the Stash Range. And we did some really high quality stuff. Um, we featured in photo shoots at like New York Fashion Week and things like that. It was a really cool experience at the time, being sort of like 19 or whatever I was, 19, 20 maybe at this point. And it just helped me learn a heap. And I've always found that I learn best by doing. I now am a bit of a sort of theory nerd in many ways, but I wasn't at the time. I was less interested in many of the things that I'm interested in now. Fast forward, I also did some sort of contract work as I was evolving my practical skill sets. But fast forward sort of like to the end of this experience with the Stash Range, I came back to the injury problem in elite sports and I learned that it was a really big issue. It wasn't just impacting me, it was impacting folks all around the world. Athletes across different disciplines, geographies, different levels of progression. And just in elite sports alone, professional sports, is about a $16 billion per annum problem. And so I, at the time, didn't know how to build a tech startup. I was learning actively. I was learning about business model design. I was learning about venture building. I was learning about angel investing and how, as a founder, to negotiate term sheets and all these different types of things. And figured, why not give it a crack? I managed to build the early team, raise funding. Long story short, It was a super learning opportunity, but I made a bunch of mistakes, particularly in terms of how we built out our cap table and some of the hiring decisions that I made. And that really made us uninvestable. We ended up returning those funds to our investors, which is a relatively amicable way to get out. And I then had the opportunity to become an entrepreneur in residence, and that was really like a holding role, a learning role, if you will, because it gives you time to figure out what to do next. And I started working with some wonderful people who accelerated my learning velocity, gave me access to a heap of different experiences. I ended up within the same organization leading product innovation portfolios where we were going through the entire end-to-end sort of venture building process to an extent within a large institution, a large organization, to try and define what the future of that organization could look like. So we were doing value proposition design, business model design, rapidly prototyping, engaging in a variety of different research activities to try and build validated bodies of evidence so that we could enhance the confidence with which we would make recommendations to the global executive committee. I, throughout this whole period, became very interested in power and in the role that information asymmetry plays in society, and specifically information ethics, privacy, data protection, data ethics. And that was a real feature in Sport Performance Accelerator. We were building that startup to be privacy by design. But it got to the point where I thought, there's so much happening in the world. The world is so information heavy, so data driven, that if we don't start getting some of these fundamental things right, we're going to look back in 20 or 30 years and go, holy crap, we've messed up. And so I decided with my wife to move to Europe. I took up a really wonderful role at Miko, which is one of the first personal information management startups, along with DigiMe and a few others. They led the way for more, person-centric, human-centric ways for people to utilize their information in ways that delivered them value, meaning, and engagement. And that gave me incredible access to the market that I really wanted to get access to. It enabled me to learn a heap, keep refining the things that I was doing. And throughout this process, I was able to sort of develop a toolkit for designing trustworthy product and service experiences, which led myself and my wife, Bianca, to co-found a company called Greater Than X. And Greater Than X's core thesis is that the most trustworthy organizations will be the most valued. They will develop the best relationships with their customers. They will deliver the most value, meaning, and engagement. They will win their market. Now, at the time that I developed this thesis, or we developed this thesis, and we started putting it to the test experimentally via a commercial venture, which we self-funded, the evidence was suggestive that we were on the right path, but it wasn't anywhere near as strong as it is today. If you look at, say, the Edelman Trust Barometer, it's very clear that organizations are failing at ethics, even though ethics is 3 times more important than competence when it comes to trust. Privacy is directly valuable to organizations and customers. It's not just a compliance thing. Highly operational approaches to ethics enhance trust. Trust is disproportionately impactful on bottom line business outcomes. So this isn't fluffy stuff. This isn't just about doing good. It is about doing that, but it's also incredibly impactful for commercial and other organizations. As I was building Greater Than X, I had the opportunity to design learning experiences as sort of like a semi-formal and a rather casual instructor at General Assembly in London and New York and things like that. I began investing in 2016. My first investment in a startup. I've since made 43 additional investments. I only made one investment in 2016, one in 2018, and then 21 each year from 2019 onwards. And that's part of an intention that I have to invest in 20 plus impact focused, values aligned startups every single year that are focused on designing a more socially preferable future, bettering our socio-political systems, bettering our economic systems, bettering our food systems, bettering our energy systems, and generally just tackling broken structures that unfortunately we have to interact with on a daily basis. I also, over the last few years, have had the opportunity, sort of the last 7 years, to speak professionally in a variety of different settings, from very large events with thousands and thousands of people through to very tight and focused events in boardrooms and with executive committees all around the world. A lot of this experience has led myself and the chief platform officer at Greater Than X, my friend, my colleague, someone that I learn from on a daily basis, Matt Mitka, to build a new startup called Greater Than Learning. And Greater Than Learning is really the manifestation of everything that we have learned over the past decade, focusing on how we might use our work as a force for good. It's a learning platform and community that's dedicated towards topics that we believe can enable tomorrow to be better than today. As in, how do we help people, leaders, practitioners, develop practical skills, get hands-on with new tools so that they can go out into their work and use their work as a force for good. They can design the organization that they work for or with for the qualities of trustworthiness, to be truly open and transparent, to consistently deliver value, and to own the consequence, both positive and negative, of its actions. If I could share anything with you, it would probably be quite simple. Recognize that you are going to go on your own journey. That doesn't mean you have to do it alone. You have to do it with others. Develop a bias towards collaboration and cooperation. It sounds cliche, but we are stronger together, far stronger together, in fact. But you do have to recognize you will go on your own unique journey. And that might mean that, unlike me, you go through a more traditional pathway through multiple degrees and then work in different institutions or organizations or corporations. Maybe you then go out on your own, maybe you don't. There is so much opportunity available to you. Perhaps the thing that is most important is your ability to learn, evolve, and adapt. The world around us has changed in ways that many of us wouldn't have forecast or predicted going back 12, 18 months. Others have been predicting significant sort of zoonotic disease for quite some time, so it wasn't actually a black swan event. But anyways, that's beside the point. Recognize that you will go on your own unique journey. Your learning velocity, your ability to adapt, those things matter perhaps more than anything. And the perhaps more than anything is worth calling out. If we as a species, close to 8 billion of us, if we valued more kindness, compassion and empathy and courage, we would be in a far better position to design a better future. Not just better for our species, but better for our ecology, better for the entire world around us, the species that we co-inhabit this planet with, sentient and otherwise. And I think that's important. And sometimes that goes unsaid or undersaid. Kindness, compassion, empathy, courage, these things really matter. And so as you engage in your journey, as you go out into the world, as you try and figure out who you are and who you want to be kind, be compassionate, be empathetic, and be courageous. I wish you the best of luck. Bye-bye.